everyone. We made it. We made it. This is our final panel session. Thank you so much for just your attention. I believe that people who are having the financing conversation is just taking longer. Y- Yeah, money talk. Okay. As long as it's coming to us, we're fine with it, right? They can proceed. So the final session will be talking about best practices. Um, it came up continuously around issues of how does harm reduction look like within our context. It's different. And it should include our voice and how we apply it. So we have four prestigious. Yes, Jason, I include you. My panelists who will join here and share with us their experiences, practical experiences, lived experiences around harm reduction, people who use drugs and how they've included them and how it looks in their specific context. Context matter. So, our first panelist is, so like I said, I'm from South Africa, as you can see, and it's so weird to speak to an elder without adding a Mr. So whenever I'm saying Jason, a part of me is cringing a bit. So, Ntate Jason, he is a senior expert and a thematic lead on drugs of global initiative against the transnational organized crime. He is an illicit drugs trade policy reform specialist who focused on understanding the characteristics, structures of drug trade industry, with particular focus and factors related to illicit drug market, emergency growth, and its resilience. Sir, please, thank you. Yeah, this is your mic.
That's too small for
It's
me.
too small.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. What it doesn't say in my bio is that I had or I have no background training in epidemiology or health or anything like that from my early days, from my university graduate days. My training was actually as a geographer. So, unusual in this field, I think. The other thing is that I've been a harm reductionist for over 30 years. So I'd like in the next maybe 12 to 15 minutes or however much time Dee gives me to go over a few stories of my involvement working directly with communities of people who use drugs. So let me take you back almost 30 years. I was working in a country in East Asia, and my job at the time was to support the country in tracking the transition of drug use in an area where a large road was being built. It was a rural area, highland populations, and the majority of people there used only opium traditionally. And the government was worried that with the new road coming in, bad things might happen in terms of heroin, and particularly serotransmission of HIV. So my job was to track the progress of the road, to track changes in drug use behavior, and to look at levels of HIV in the surrounding communities. So, easy enough for a young scholar to go out and spend time in the field in a foreign country, which was great. The problem was, there was a real problem. There was a real problem of drug use changing quite rapidly as a result, not just of the road moving in, but the workers who were involved, coming from outside, inside, bringing outside behaviors inside. And I'm sure you're all aware of this in one way or another. So we sat down with the government officials, said this is a problem. They said, well, what should we do about it? Me, geographer, said, well, I don't know, why don't we ask the experts? And they said, who's that? I said, well, why don't we ask people who use drugs? Because they'll tell us how things are changing, why things are changing, and what's going on. And of course, law enforcement thought that was a great idea. Let's bring all of the people who use drugs into one area. We get to identify everybody, and boy, this will be great. And said that's not exactly the point. We got agreement from them not to enforce the law in a country where the law was supreme. So working with a couple of local peers, we were able to bring together a collection of about 35 people who use drugs in this area. We sat together in a hotel. The police put up a cordon around the hotel of about 200 meters, and I had to ask them, is that to keep people out or is that to keep people in? I wasn't quite sure about that. But we sat down over the course of 3 days, and an extraordinary thing happened. A program was developed, the very first needle syringe program to be done in a rural area in this country. And this came as a direct result of discussions with people who use drugs. And we covered a variety of areas. One of the first things we discussed was, how do we deal with people who are using now, putting them in a hotel, and how can they access their drugs? What do we do with needle syringes? And together we developed a small harm reduction kit that everybody would get that had needle syringes in it, had a disposal box with it, and we worked out that they would police among themselves how to make sure that everything was cool in that sense, including hooking up with local users who could allow you to find a place to get what you needed, everything below board. The second thing was, how do we know, once we get needle syringes, whether we're getting the coverage we need? How do we know we're getting to all the people we need? And one of the unique things we learned about injecting drug use behavior at this time was that most of it occurred outside, and it occurred in some very specific spots around town. You guys know this already. It was new to me. And going to those spots, what we noticed was, at that time, there was only one place to get needle syringes, and that was to steal it from health centers. And every health center, there was a wrapper on the needle syringe, and it was a very specific wrapper because there was only one company in the country that produced them. So the outside place of use would be littered with these wrappers all around in the bamboo plots. So you would know, okay, there's a lot of injection behavior going on here, et cetera, et cetera. And they said, why don't we turn the wrapper over, print a new wrapper with a harm reduction message on the back? I thought that was a great idea. And they said, well, what language do we put it in? Because there are 15 different languages here. So we don't need a language, we'll just use pictures. So we spent half a day together working out which pictures would project the right image. Got this thing done, and I convinced the printing company to print it. So we printed out, I think, 1.5 million or 2 million needle syringes with these wrappers. The other thing we agreed was that we didn't want to have a needle syringe exchange. This was being pushed by outside experts who said you need a one-to-one, you need to be able to make sure you're not throwing your needle syringes out, you need an exchange. And they said, well, if you have an exchange, then I have a whole bunch of friends who aren't going to come because they don't want to be identified. And we decided that it would be needle syringe provision. And there would be no limit. You could come up and get 60 needle syringes if you wanted. We would give them to you, and off you would go. You wouldn't have to bring them back. But we had sharps boxes that went out with people. So you could just make sure that you tried to collect as many as you can. So the results of that initial 30 years ago learning lesson for me, first, the wrapper was a brilliant idea. Every week, a peer would go around, and they would clean up wrappers in different areas of use. And over time, they started to realize that there was a transition in the wrappers going from completely blank on the back all the way through in some spots to completely filled with a harm reduction message on the back. Everybody who's using here is using one of our needle syringes. There were other areas where it would be sort of 50%. And then the question came up, well, we're not reaching some part of the population. Who are they? How do we change the program to meet these groups of people? The third thing that came up was just the geographic reach of this particular program. It was set for a very small area, But through secondary exchange and tertiary exchange, we were reaching 4 times as many people as we'd originally thought, and we were actually supplying needle syringes to all of the surrounding counties out of this one program because we had no limit on what number we would give to people. So it was an extraordinary program that lasted for about 2 years and was very much under the radar. It was a program that I had, the donor's not in the room today, so I can say this. I had money to run, but I was explicitly told, is this going to be published on the web? That the money could not be used to buy needle syringes. I could run an education program. So that's what I did. With users, I ran an education program, and every month I would give figures that said 267,112 educational materials were distributed this month, instead of saying needle syringes were distributed. So that was another lesson for me. Doing the right things sometimes requires finding ways around ridiculous rules. The other thing I learned also is that sometimes big players cause more damage than good. So I said that this program lasted for 2 years. The program was ended because another large donor came in and they had decided that they wanted to be the first organization to fund harm reduction in this country. So obviously they couldn't have any competitors, and they certainly couldn't have a program that pre-existed their program. So immediately the government cut the program. HIV, you can imagine what happened there. They didn't get needle syringes back there, I think, for another 10 years, which was extraordinary. But for me, that was the beginning of a process of understanding who the real experts were. I learned an awful lot about injecting drug use. I learned an awful lot about drugs themselves, how they moved, how markets evolved. And I learned that all from people who use drugs. So I carried that knowledge with me throughout the subsequent years, some of which included employment with the United Nations. Is Gunnar here? No? Good. An organization that I found to be extraordinarily reluctant to listen to evidence from the ground on what is going on. And an organization against which I would repeatedly be the prickly bear, as I mentioned to Bernice. I would be the one asking these questions, these difficult questions. Yes, but does it really mean that? I give you an example, the World Drug Report, the Bible of drugs that many people who don't know a lot about an area will go to and quote at the beginning of their paper, the beginning of their speech. If you look in the methodology and you read how the numbers are determined, you'll realize immediately the limitation of the numbers in that report. And if you look at Africa specifically, you will see that the last year they indicated the ARQ by country response rate. The ARQ is the annual reports questionnaire. That's the instrument they give the countries to say, hey, tell us how many people use drugs in your country. Tell us this and this and this. 2021 was the last year that they recorded the response rate. I'd like to think it's because I kept criticizing it, but that would be too much. 10 African countries made a submission. Goodness here. 10 African countries made a submission, and Gunnar and I have talked about this a lot, and Gunnar's on our side. He just can't say that officially, right, Gunnar? 10 African countries made a submission. Only 3 made a submission, 10 out of 55. Only 3 made a submission that was deemed to be substantially complete. Now, substantially complete sounds like great, we have a whole submission. The challenge is the UN doesn't have the right to go back and quality control these submissions. They have to take them from the country as gospel. And having worked on the other side of this with countries, when an official comes up to me and says, hey, I have this thing I have to fill in, I don't know what to do. And then they finally tell me in the end, well, my boss said just make stuff up and submit it in. I know what some countries are doing. It's not to say that all countries are doing that. but there are challenges. Now, I will say they've tried to get better. They've changed the ARQ. They're doing it again this year, I think. And they're trying to make it better by also incorporating other information. But the biggest piece of missing information is information collected by people like us in the work that we do and the reports that we write. Because that's gray literature, that's outside of their mandate. It's not a scientific article. And so that's a huge gap in this entire process. So through the years, I finally made it here to the continent and doing work here. And one of the first things I did when I arrived here, and Sean is in the room, I think Andrew's in the room, the first thing I tried to do was, let's sit down. I want to sit down with people who use drugs, and I want to listen. And we organized a meeting here in Cape Town. Some of you in the room were at that meeting. You might remember what happened. We had it in a lovely hotel here in Cape Town, right down on the beach. Active users from Durban, Joburg, and here in Cape Town. Many of them homeless. I'd learned from the first session. We'd organized harm reduction kits, and I thought it was really well done. Problem was the hotel didn't really like us having a meeting there with all of their foreign guests sitting by the pool, watching as we would move into the meeting room, and we had to move it to UCT. But the result of this meeting that was completely run by people who use drugs was a really great initial report on drug use in the country and how to move forward. And that report, I think, laid the foundation for what eventually happened with the CDA, and Sean mentioned this a couple of days ago, where a series of CDA meetings were then held in the development of the master plan that included 2 or 3 CDA members and then 36 people who use drugs, who then ran the meeting and said, you want to know about drugs in our community? We'll tell you. Just listen. Now, the majority of the research I've been doing over the last 5 or 6 years is based on my desire to really understand unusual things. I see something unusual, and I ask myself the question, that's really strange, and begin to poke around about it. So through the global initiative, we've published a number of reports that have covered drug markets in the region, South Africa specifically. And in just about every one of those reports, the key partner in undertaking the research has been organizations of people who use drugs, both collectively and individually, across the region. And where it's safe to say so, that's indicated at the beginning of the report. But you know that there are several countries here who first don't want to recognize that they have either people who use drugs or organized groups of people who use drugs. And secondly, would use that report and evidence of their involvement to try and prize from us the information of who are they, where do they live, etc. It's a challenge that we continue to undertake in some of the countries we're working in and trying to work through it. What have I learned in 30-odd years of setting up these programs? I think the first thing is the principle of equality, and that's treating community, whether they're CSOs or people who use drugs, participants, treating them as equal partners to myself and others in the process. That they are equal partners to the research process. They're equal to me as an individual, and equal in the sense of their voice. And it's making sure that their voice is tuned into the process. And that has led, in fact, to a lot of really great research results. One thing I would say that users here in South Africa should maybe take some pride in, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but the identification of methamphetamine made in Afghanistan was done here in South Africa first before it was identified anywhere else in the world. And that came from users saying, hey, there's something new in the meth market. There's a new supply. It's quite good. It comes from et cetera, et cetera. And when I first spoke to security organizations and others, they said, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. They said, there's no meth being made in Afghanistan. Secondly, If there is meth in Afghanistan, it's not very good. Third, if it is there and it's not very good, it's not being shipped out of Afghanistan. Well, we know now, a few years later, that in fact there was, potentially still is, an extraordinary amount of meth being made there. And that resolution came only after we got chemical analysis of the meth to prove that it wasn't meth made here, it was in fact made over there. But that information came almost a year from users here before it was public elsewhere. The second thing, listen. That's something hard, I think, for so-called experts to do. As experts, we don't want to listen, we want to talk. We want to demonstrate how smart we are. We want to tell you that, yes, okay, I have 30 years of experience. You know, what can you tell me that I haven't heard already? And I think that comes down to the types of individuals who are involved in the process. So the ones who listen are the ones who learn, and they're the ones who actually start to develop really good programs because they're hitting all the right notes. There is not a harm reduction program that can be run exactly the same way in every country in the world. There's no silver bullet. There's no universal approach. Some of the structural elements are the same, but how you do it, completely different, right? The first country I went to, let's put a message on the back of the wrapper. It's great. Doesn't work in an area where you have 16 different needle syringe suppliers. So it's sitting down and listening and then working through designs of how you're going to do it together. The third thing, pay. You want to pay people who use drugs? They're only going to use the money to buy drugs. So, this has been, over the last 30 years, probably one of the most contentious things that I've had to deal with in terms of donors versus programming. And, okay, yes, sometimes I've had to hide it in the programming under different labels. But people need to be paid for the work that they're doing. So if you're paying people as researchers and you're saying they're equal to us, then you need to be paying them the research rates that you would pay anybody else. Doesn't matter what they use it for. They can go down to McDonald's and eat all the food and get big and fat like me. They can use it for drugs, whatever. It's their money from their work that they earned. And I think that's an important part. Giving them tickets or giving them pens or whatever else is just ridiculous. The fourth of the five is trust, but verify. Like any other community of people, there will be one or two who try and game the system. Maybe they write up interviews that they didn't really do. But that's not unique to people who use drugs. I had an international consultant submit to me a report not long ago that was written by AI. And they thought I wouldn't notice. The first clue to me were citations with my name on it for things I never wrote. So I didn't know I wrote that. But it's just, lazy people will be lazy people. Bad people will be bad people. Just because somebody uses drugs doesn't mean they're lazy or bad. Right? That's a characteristic of any individual. So it's trust, like you would do with anybody else, but also verify, like I do with every other person who works for me. Have you done the work? Let me see. Let's talk about it. The final thing, and I mentioned this earlier, is credit. What's the use of involving people who use drugs in a research process or development or running of a program if you don't also give them credit for doing it? Now, I mentioned earlier credit where possible, because you don't want to identify people that would then expose them to danger. But credit where possible, in occasions and locations where that's possible to be done. Those would be my 5 lessons, Dee. I'm happy to discuss in more detail, but Today, I'm 30 years on in harm reduction, and I'll tell you, I'm still learning. And I'm still learning from a lot of people here in the room today, and I thank you for that. This geographer thanks you.
Thank you so much. He said they will talk, just listen. And that process has led a geographer into a 30-year career in harm reduction. And moving from a geographer to an educator, we have, it's just amazing when I hear stories of how people ended up in this field. Wangari started wanting to be a teacher, but seeing the plight associated with ensuring reproductive health issues and human rights for women who use drugs has led her into this to serve us. She is a Kenyan who works as an international consultant in research, training, and advocacy in harm reduction and drug policy. She currently has a Master's of Arts and pursuing a PhD in sociology. She is the Advocacy and Capacity Building Officer of Women and Harm Reduction in the International Network. She is the author of the Eastern and Southern African chapter of the Global State of Harm Reduction 2022 by Harm Reduction International. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Okay. Okay, I didn't know where to touch. Now I know. So I'll present, I'm a Kenyan, and I've been in harm reduction for like 8 years or something like that. We've come from far as Kenya, and a lot of times I say, yes, it's good to have visits from one country to the other, learn from Kenya, but be careful you do not pick our mistakes. It would be very nice that we be honest and say we started with very good things, but we also made mistakes, and we are learning from international best practices and from other countries. The work I'll be presenting isn't my work. It is, I'll mention something from the Harm Reduction International, the Global State of Harm Reduction 2022. Why will I do that? Because I would really urge all of us, please, to visit this document, to look at it, because it puts together, after every 2 years, what has been done. So I won't present all of it, but I'll just let us look at it and say, we are doing well. We've not done very well, but we are moving, and as Africa, we should be able to pat ourselves on the back and say, we are moving. I'll also present on a very interesting toolkit on integration of sexual and reproductive health for women and gender diverse people into harm reduction services. This is a document, a guide that was developed by Frontline AIDS, and then later a toolkit or a facilitator's guide was developed, which is now what I do. We are rolling out this project in 10 countries, but the need is so much. Every harm reduction service provider ought to be capacity built in integrating sexual and reproductive health services in harm reduction, and that's what we are doing. What I said, I mentioned about the global state of harm reduction. The most interesting part is that there are new needle seedage programs that opened between 2020 and 2022 in 5 African countries. So there was quite a remarkable progress, and it was happening in Africa. Yes, so we need, and here they are actually, Burundi. It may not be up to the standards that we would like, but this is starting to happen. Countries that would earlier on not listen to harm reduction are right now in Africa listening to harm reduction, giving civil society organizations space, giving community of people who use drugs space. So, and we need to appreciate this, because for advocacy, if you wait until you get where you want to go, we are already old. I mean, we will be old, the young ones will be old, and then you will be frustrated. We need to pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, there has been some change. Also, there has been OAT, opioid agonist therapy. There were 3 countries from Africa between 2020 and 2022 that started opioid agonist therapy programs. I'm interested in this part. It's really interesting because we have a whole 20 countries in sub-Saharan Africa that have a policy, not necessarily a policy, a government document that is mentioning something to do with, even if they don't call it harm reduction, something to do with appreciating services for people who use drugs. We want to go very far, but I would like us to mention that this is not really, it's something to be proud of. And Harm Reduction International acknowledged that it is as a result of advocacy by community and civil society organizations. So our work is bearing some fruit. Before I go to the work that we are doing with Women and Harm Reduction International Network, I would want to mention what is happening in Kenya. There are 3 models that are really supporting women who use drugs. We have one group of lawyers. They are called Next Gen Paralegal lawyers, and what they've done, as I said earlier on, if a community member was arrested, it would be a person who is not a community member who would run to the police station and try to help out that case. Now, it doesn't happen like that in Kenya. We have pro bono lawyers that are partnering a community member with a lawyer. So if there is a case, Bernice is the advocate. I am a community member. I will be partnered with Bernice. So we will go with Bernice to the police station. Bernice will speak for the first day or second day, but that day she will keep quiet. And she'll let me talk with the police. She'll let me learn how to go about it. And women who use drugs are taking this space very strongly. The people who use drugs, men who use drugs, everyone, but it is the first time I've seen that these paralegals are women who use drugs. Why am I emphasizing on women who use drugs? Because remember, a man who uses drugs is easier to fit into, the court system. It's a patriarchal system. It's easier for him. There are still challenges, but he's a man. But for the woman to go find an advocate, it was a bit much harder. So we really appreciate this model, and if it would work elsewhere, it would really be a good model where we partner advocates with community members to mentor them until one day we keep calling ourselves small lawyers nowadays. All of us are saying, yeah, small lawyers, because we've been capacity built so much. The next model that I find that is working very well, yesterday I mentioned, we are talking about gender-based violence, very good harm reduction services, but without shelters, basic shelters for women who use drugs. Really, it will not work. We said the main problem we have is poverty, the state of homelessness. And it's not for all women who use drugs. Some women who use drugs will not need that, to be very honest. But there are a majority who are in the streets of Korogosho in Nairobi, Madara in Nairobi, who need just a place to put their head and their child. And we learned this during COVID. We were really disheartened that it is evening. We don't want people who use drugs to be in the street. But for a woman and a child, and the rape case stories, you won't even talk about them. They are so disheartening, they are extreme. It's like part of life. So if we are going to give services to women who are experiencing homelessness, let's start discussing just basic shelters. Actually, these shelters by this organization called Women Nest, they are in the same slums. You don't go and look for some posh estate. No, same slums. Just a room somewhere that they know when other people in the evening go to their home, I have a place I can go call home. And it's really changing. It's a game changer, even for the children. That's the first time you realize this woman has 3 children. But you will say she has neglected the children. She hasn't neglected the children. She just didn't have a place she could call home. Then we have the Harm Reduction and Drug Policy Caucus. Rita just talked about it earlier on, but what we are trying to do is to try to avoid working in silos. And I really appreciate the work being done by Input and other organizations supporting and empowering community. But as community continues becoming empowered, remember we also have the pushback of we are the people who have been in this space, so Wangare is doing this, Rita is doing that, so and so is doing that. We will not go anywhere as a country. So we are trying to see how can we work, especially in terms of national issues, how can we work as a caucus? And community is taking this space. Rita just explained how recently we had a situation where there was a bill in Parliament, it was going in a very bad direction, but community was able to share their stories and things were done differently. I will go now straight to the toolkit. So it's a toolkit integrating sexual and reproductive health with harm reduction services for women and gender diverse people who use drugs. And it is developed by, here it is. What is the genesis? It started with this guide. The guide is developed by Frontline AIDS and Women and Harm Reduction International plus Academy of Perinatal Harm Reduction. And you can go online and find it. It's a public document. You can find it. It can be used anywhere. All we would want is, let's integrate comprehensive sexual and reproductive health into harm reduction services. So after that, a facilitator's guide was developed, and this is now what I do. This is what I do currently with Women and Harm Reduction International Network. What we are doing is we are using this facilitator's guide. It is here. Let me just explain using this. Okay, maybe I could go back. Okay. So I will not explain the stigma, discrimination, we all understand. It is tailored for low and middle, like countries that are not having these services already. Mostly Africa, we fit here most of the countries. So we usually pick people who are in harm reduction in decision-making positions as much as possible, because we want, after we have trained you, it's not even a training, it's a workshop. Very, very interactive. We do all of them online. We've done one in Nigeria, we have done one in Burundi, we are going to do in Mauritius, we've done in Kenya. And there's so much need. After the training in Nigeria, we were called back. Wangare, come back, because you trained 15 people. You know, you can't do more than 15. They gave us another group of 25. There's so much need, because what has been happening, I can tell you, I worked in harm reduction earlier. I used to say, hey, we give services to women who use drugs. Hey, my friend, I realized later, I don't know what you are giving. Because women come to the service and you give them needles, you give them syringes, you ask a few questions related to the women, but in terms of understanding the comprehensive package of harm reduction, I did not harm reduction, of sexual and reproductive health, I honestly didn't know. After like 6 years working in a drop-in center, I didn't know them myself. And that's why I think we need, really, if you're able, if you can share this toolkit to someone else, if someone is able to support a group of 15 harm reduction service providers, let's have as many as possible understanding this toolkit. What is unique about this toolkit? The definition of a woman is in the broad sense. Not just the woman who we call cis woman. You know, cis woman, the woman who is biologically woman and the gender is woman. No. It includes trans women and all the gender diverse people whose needs fit in with the needs of a woman who uses drugs. That is what is unique about it. Because the moment we don't define a woman in the broader sense, who takes care of the rest of our members of the community? And when we say we want integration, it doesn't have to be under one roof. It can be referral. But let's recognize that these needs exist. So the gender-bread person is just to say that we are talking in terms of diversity of a woman. The toolkit was developed with community engagement and review. Rita was one of the people who were very much involved in developing the toolkit, and many other women from India and elsewhere. It addresses acute shortfalls and disinformation. Why disinformation? I'll show you. I'm interested in, these are the modules. It has 10 modules. I will not go to all the modules, but let me tell you, if we do not address gender norms and stereotypes, we will give syringes, we will give all the services, but how will people come out while they are being stigmatized just for being women who are using drugs? We need to have it as one of the modules. We need to have those, you know, those IEC materials hanging in our drop-in centers, addressing gender norms and stereotypes. We need that. I'm interested actually in number 6, perinatal and newborn care. The amount of disinformation. You know, if you're pregnant and you give birth to a baby, your baby will be you know, those things that we also sometimes in harm reduction we tell the women, and they are not true. There has been a lot of exaggeration by media over the years, we know, to make people talks about crack babies. It's not true. Actually, scientifically, if someone has seen a baby who is having issues because the mother used cocaine or used heroin, maybe it's time we start discussing, because it is very rare. It's very rare. There might be, when it comes to opioid, the child may experience temporal neonatal opioid withdrawal. It's not a syndrome. We are moving from calling it a syndrome. my fellow harm reduction service providers. We are calling it a withdrawal because it is a withdrawal and it's manageable. Sometimes you don't even need medical support. Just at home, just keep the child cool, calm. It will go away after 24 hours, 5 days. But the exaggeration even with us, because we don't know. So I like this toolkit because it addresses all those disinformation. There's so much more. The last one I'll talk about is number 8, the relationship between cervical cancer and women living with HIV. I didn't know that they are at risk 6 times more. 6 times more until I was training this toolkit. That if I'm living with HIV and I'm a woman, I have risk of cervical cancer 6 times more than a woman not living with HIV. So this toolkit is so powerful, I can't go to all the others. With number 5, we are able to show a video that is very easy on medical abortion. We may not want to discuss abortion, but remember, the place where it's easiest to die from and save abortion is Africa. Yes, the more punitive the laws, the more people are likely to die from and save abortion. So this is just some of the countries they have given their feedback. The feedback is really rich. It's rich feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angari. We appreciate that bachelor's in education. Everything builds on on itself. And this is where we've come to Mr. Michael Wilson, who from the Belhaven Harm Reduction Center. And it started during COVID, in a moment of crisis, something you can come out of that. So, things to know about Michael. He's a co-director of the Belhaven Harm Reduction Center, which is the first in South Africa that is truly low threshold. Michael is also a professor at the Gillen School of Global Public Health and has over a decade of experience supporting public health programs, which focuses on the needs of people who use drugs and people who are experiencing homelessness. Sir?
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Michael. I just want to start by just really being humbled by this opportunity to share on this platform. I think whenever I come to a harm reduction conference, it really is a space not just to share and be inspired, but I think to dream, to vent, and also to be supported, because I think this work is really hard. And just as I was just sitting here, I was thinking about a couple of things. One was just looking at this putting people first, and I really hope that we don't just say this, that this isn't just a slogan, but this becomes a lifestyle in our programs, in our reporting, in our advocacy. I am really humbled to be up here to present about Belhaven. There are a lot of people that also could be up here presenting about Belhaven. When I think about the last 3 years, there's the African proverb that says, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it's taken a village to start a harm reduction center. And I think as Jason was just saying, just looking around the room, I think there's so many people that have taught me so much. Just looking at Ruan and Klaus and Lucky and Cavanya and Yolan and so many others that have poured into my own journey and my own learning. And so I am really humbled to be here today to share with you all a little bit about our journey. So I'm going to speak about the Belhaven Harm Reduction Center. Let me just see where this is. All right, so I think it's hard to talk about Belhaven without talking about a bit about our history, our short history, just 3 years. So we did kind of start during COVID. So I just want to look at the context which surrounds the beginning of Belhaven. So in 2016, there was an HSRC study that was done. Some of you may be familiar with point-in-time studies. At the time, there was a study done in Durban which found about roughly 4,000 individuals experiencing homelessness living in urban areas around Durban, and this was published. Recently, that number, as of 2022, the point-in-time count suggests about 16,000 individuals experiencing homelessness in the eThekwini district. As Jason, I think, was alluding to, and as many in here know, oftentimes these kinds of these kinds of reports really underreport, right? Sometimes, just because of resource constraints, the people going out to count people experiencing homelessness are often not familiar with where people are staying, the times of days, those kinds of things. So all that to say, going into COVID, we were suspecting somewhere between 7,000 to 10,000 individuals experiencing homelessness, with about 60% of them self-declaring using substances. So prior to COVID, the city's response to homelessness was really one that was slow to be responsive, very conservative within the council itself, and really taking a prohibitionist stance when it comes to dealing with the needs of people who use drugs. So I just want to give you a quick overview of what COVID-19 looks like in Durban for people experiencing homelessness. So this is actually one of the sites. So we had, over the course of about 3 days, we had about 2,200 individuals come through the Durban Exhibition Center. We had there a lot of the NGOs, DSD, Department of Health, Safer Cities, and from there, people were placed into 13 safe sleeping spaces that were set up and managed by the city. At those sites, there was 10 that were in the CBD area, and then 3 in the outer Isipingo, Phoenix, and Pinetown. And as you can imagine with these numbers, within just a few days, there was really a serious health issue going on in terms of people experiencing very traumatic drug withdrawal. And so myself and a professor from DUT were asked by the deputy mayor, the former deputy mayor of Durban, to start a withdrawal program using methadone on 2 of the sites. So I'm just going to go back. So this was actually one of our sites. This is the underground parking lot of Moses Mabhida Stadium. So we had about 260 people that were staying in this parking lot. It was quite a bit bigger, but you can get a sense for the size. And then the other site was Albert Park, which is where this photograph is from. So really, we kind of see COVID in some ways as a catalyst for change. Because during COVID, just in a matter of weeks, Durban went from applying, as I said, a very prohibitionist stance towards dealing with drug use and the needs of people experiencing homelessness to one that was very supportive of new ideas. And there was a platform to engage in dialogue with city officials around how best to deal with these issues. So we called it the Durban moment, and I think that hopefully it wasn't just a Durban moment. We actually wrote a short piece just about kind of the light shining through the cracks and the management of this program during the lockdown. And so really, I do want to just highlight, that COVID allowed for this engagement, not only between city officials and advocates of harm reduction, but also a chance for law enforcement, a chance for city officials to interact, and as Jason was just saying, to really talk with people who use drugs, to interact. And so, you can imagine these sites were managed by Safer Cities. They were also managed by, we had support from Metro Police and SAPS. And the whole day, the individuals that were staying at these sites together with members of Metro Police, city officials, were just interacting. And so it was a really amazing chance, not only for them to see, have a front row seat of a harm reduction program playing out, but also just for interaction and for dialogue, which was probably the most valuable. So the city really did commit during this time to a new approach. So the Council of eThekwini set aside its own building called the Belhaven Memorial Hall during this time to be a harm reduction center. So there was a council resolution that was passed. This is a city-owned building. So we moved into this building on June 1st of 2020 when we went into level 3 of lockdown and people could move from the lockdown sites. So again, what this really represented was an ideological shift in many ways. And I just also want to highlight the important role that law enforcement played in this, in not only the dialogue, but also around the response. And instead of sort of a prohibitionist stance, adopting more of a non-interference model and sort of a referral as opposed to arrest. So, sorry, I do like photos a lot, so there are quite a few photos in this. I hope you're okay with that. Some people have said I use too many photos. But so today we have approximately 200 to 250 people that come through the center on a daily basis to access a range of services. So what is offered at Belhaven? We have daily observed methadone provision. We also have testing, referral, and provision of TB and HIV medication. About 35% of our clients are taking chronic medications, so they're all registered with a local Department of Health clinic, and then their medications are provided for them on a daily basis. At the moment, we do provide daily nutritional support thanks to funding. That hasn't been something that we've been able to offer the entire 3 years, but luckily, thankfully to our funders in the last year, we have been able to offer daily nutrition support. We also have a program which I'll tell you about just shortly that's a street-based care delivery program that's run by peers. So we call it the accompaniment program, and it uses peers to deliver TB and HIV medications to people that are staying on the streets, to visit them, to accompany them to clinic appointments and hospital visits. A large cornerstone of what we do is the individual and group psychosocial sessions, which are led by our social worker. We also have social work students from the University of KwaZulu-Natal that do rotations with us and provide a lot of support in that area. We have Durban University of Technology's homeopathy department. Their students provide homeopathy 2 days a week at Belhaven. So it really, again, we're trying to be as comprehensive. We have quite a bit of uptake. I was actually just looking at the stats a few days ago, and just last month, about 80 individuals are enrolled in some form of the homeopathy service provision at Belhaven. This is something I was just talking to Julie about, but we do offer women-focused services. This is an area we are trying to strengthen and offer more regular pap smears and monitoring for pregnancies. There is close by, as the crow flies, about 1 kilometer from the center, a city-run shelter for females called Strollers. So we do engage with them quite a lot when we do outreach and other activities. So this is our treatment accompaniment program. It is peer-led. At the moment, we have about 50 clients that we either visit on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. This is a range of individuals with TB, MDR-TB. Many of them are co-infected. So it's an opportunity for peers to visit them. Many of these individuals had defaulted on treatment previously, and so this is an opportunity for us to support them outside of Belhaven. We do provide nutrition support when it is available, and we also accompany them to hospital visits and to clinic visits. So our peers, they either walk, or when we have bicycles that are working, they ride their bicycles around the city to visit their clients. So we do a lot of community events and awareness. I think that's maybe the thing that I'm most excited about Belhaven, is that it is a platform for dialogue about harm reduction and about drug use. These are just a couple of photographs. The one on the left is from a campaign that we did with SAPS called, it was Sports is Your Gang, but then I think they changed it to Sports is Your Future. Yes, thank you. We just recently had an event called Belhaven's Got Talent that was supported by DUT. That was a really fun event that we held a couple of weeks ago. We have had annual vigils around International Drug Overdose Awareness Month. We do a lot of holiday festivities. We engage quite a bit with corporate sponsors in the area. And again, these are opportunities, one, for us to engage with community members, but also an opportunity to invite community members to Belhaven to engage, to interact, and to learn about drug use and homelessness. So a cornerstone of what we do is our partnerships. Oh, okay, I can't see that. That's fine. There we go. Okay. So again, I think I've mentioned our partnerships both with local government. So the building is provided to us rates-free. Water and electricity and 24-hour static security is provided on site by the city. So that's amazing for us because what it really means is that that those expenses are something that we do not have to cover and fundraise for. It is an existing building that was already frequented by people in the area who are experiencing homelessness and use drugs. It's quite centrally located, and so that relationship with local government is critical and critical for this. As you can see by the photographs, I think, there's no one organization that's operating from Belhaven, and that is something that we were very intentional about setting up. That, with funding cycles, and with services, we wanted to ensure that there was both continuity but also diversity in the services that we could provide. And so we work very closely with the South African Network of People Who Use Drugs. They're one of the directors, co-founders of Belhaven, TB HIV Care. We work closely with the Dennis Hurley Center, universities, so DUT, UKZN, and this is a photograph of a group in Durban called the Divine Health Forum. They do a lot of awareness raising around tuberculosis, and so we had a World TB Day event earlier this year. We have done training with local members of Metro Police, and then we have a group called IFS that we do a lot of braais with and food-related events, and it's an opportunity for them to engage. They are also in the process of building us a kitchen and a cooking area, a safe cooking area, so that we can cook our food on a daily basis, not over fire. All right, and it's a learning hub, so we believe we're still learning. Just as Jason mentioned, he's been doing this for 30 years. There's still a lot to learn, and we still have a long ways to go. And we believe Belhaven is a space for us to learn and to generate knowledge and to share. And that's something we're really excited about. So it's a frugal institution in terms of the space itself. It's low resource. We believe that it is a replicable model. The partnership, as I mentioned, with the eThekwini municipality. We have partnered with local businesses that do job training. It's not something that is a cornerstone of what we do, but it is something that when businesses approach us to say, hey, we have this job training opportunity for 6 weeks, please send us some of your beneficiaries. We've done that, and that's contributing to our skills development. And research, so we are wanting to learn. We have presented at a couple of conferences recently, the SA AIDS conference. We have 2 abstracts that were just recently accepted to the Fast Track Cities conference in Amsterdam later this year. And we love students, so we have a lot of students that come both. This was a group from Boston College in the United States. We have a lot of students, South African students that come. We have medical students, we have nursing students, a lot of different types of students. I'm probably missing some social work students. So for us, that's a really important part is the knowledge generation and the opportunity to learn and to share. So I just wanted to conclude because for us, something that is very important is recognizing the micro and the macro kind of wins of a place like a harm reduction center. So I just wanted to read a couple of quotes, and I got permission from a client who had been on our program at the time of these quotes for 2 weeks. And I just want that to sink in because I think oftentimes we wait to look and then analyze progress. But I'm just going to read them. I know you all can read them, but I'm just going to end with this, and then there's one more slide with a few more quotes. Hope that's okay. So now I'm just worrying about getting sleep, getting soap to wash, getting Colgate. Now I'm starting to be human again. I'm not like an animal. I'm thinking, hey, I smell bad. I must go and bath now. It's not like the other time. The other time, hey, I didn't care how I smelled. I didn't care about anything. I just wanted to chase Wunga. Now I think, I'm thinking of myself. I'm buying Colgate, soap, things I did not do before. And I might just mention that this gentleman shared with me that he loves brushing his teeth. So I think that's kind of clear in this. So he says, now I can go buy another sandal. If I need a short, I'm going to keep my money and buy another short. I can even now go to the shelter, I won't lie. I can even go to the shelter, pay 50 rand, and sleep. The other day I was playing soccer all day and I was happy. When I was using Haibo, I can't play soccer. Hey, what's soccer going to give me? I need to find money. I need to go sell. I need to go beg people to buy things. When you're on drugs, you must have lies. You must tell people stories. Now I'm chill. I'm washing my clothes. I can feel, I can breathe now. I'm free now. I'm happy. I sleep a lot now. I don't have to smoke. Now I can't sleep at night. Now I can sleep at night. It's not like previously. Before to sleep, I have to smoke. Now I can even remember what I was dreaming about. If you have a picture of me when I was coming into this place and now, I was black in complexion and I was ugly and dirty, and you couldn't sit with me like this. But even now, even my big brother cried when he saw me. It was the first time he gave me money. I'm starting to fix my life. Hey, my life was a mess. These 2 weeks was a change of my life. The social worker last week helped me to contact my family. I talked with my mother for long. I'd never talked with my mother, and my mother cried. And that feeling for me, hey, I was happy. She asked me, you're still alive? I told her, now I'm getting help. Here, they give you methadone and they give you a chance to start your life over again. I know I did a lot of bad things, but I hope I'm given second chances. Since these 2 weeks for me, I can see lots of things are going to happen in my life. So I just wanted to end there because I think that this is what we celebrate and what we try to capture is to really lean in from the very beginning and recognize that very drastic, dramatic changes happen in people's life quite quickly. And I think it's something that is really important to us is to celebrate these small wins just as much as the individuals who have been on our program for 3 years. So if you haven't been to Belhaven and you come to Durban sometime, we would love to have you. Thanks so much for the opportunity to share.
I'm coming. Thank you so much for the great work you guys are doing. I'm just running out of time. For my last speaker, we have Mr. Hendrik Lefoka. He's a social worker who's been within the field of substance use for 10 years now, 5 which have been dedicated to the community-oriented substance use program. Hendrik is deeply committed to the field of substance use, particularly harm reduction. He's gonna kill me for telling you guys this. There's a quote where they were referring to NSP before he got inaugurated into substance use, and he referred to NSP as, it's disgusting. Now no one advocates for harm reduction like Hendrik. He's also co-published 2 peer-reviewed papers on women who use nyaupe. Sir, if you...
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Okay, thank you. As I've been introduced, my name is Hendrik Lefoka, and I'm a field worker. I love the streets, and I love my people. And seeing my people function, pleasure my heart more than money. So I know earlier there was a commission around money, but for me, it's all about seeing my people functioning. Because like the chair has indicated, I was once interviewed in 2016 when NSP was starting to get on the street, and I was told, I told the media, this is disgusting practice. But today, I advocate for harm reduction. I advocate for NSP, and I love it. So my presentation is titled Harm Reduction in Practice, the case of community-oriented use program. So in my presentation, I will cover the background, where we come from, where we're going, and I'll also discuss the staff component within COSAP and the service that we provide. And I'll also touch on the partnership and stakeholder relations, and sports is your future a bit, and the value of community engagement. Then what is COSAP? COSAP is a partnership between the University of Pretoria. So COSAP is a partnership between the University of Pretoria and City of Tshwane municipality. So this partnership is based on what each party brings on board. And the municipality brings money, while university brings the technical skills and the know-how. So this partnership is sustained through an SLA, service level agreement. And initially, the service level agreement was signed in May 2016 for 3 years until 2020. And that it was first a pilot project which was, endorsed, and it was signed again for another 3 years from July 2020 to June 2023. And currently, we have been given extension until December, but we are negotiating that we get a continuation of another 3 years. And COSAP is inspired by harm reduction and the principles of community-based primary health care. Okay. So COSAP is, let me put this side. Thank you. So COSAP is is inspired by harm reduction and the principles of community-oriented primary care. To health and to the well-being of people who provide, to the well-being of people that we serve, which is people who use drugs. So currently, COSAP has 16 sites across 4 regions of City of Tshwane. And what are we all about? What we strive to achieve as COSAP is to reduce the burden of drugs and substance use or abuse through the comprehensive integrated evidence-based strategy, the demand, harm reduction, and through supporting supply reduction. And furthermore, to create an environment that will enable the prevention, early detection, and delivery of appropriate services through using the community-oriented care model. And we also strive to implement a continuum of effective intervention on a health promotion level, prevention level, treatment, health care, social protection, and rehabilitation services. And as the university, we have availed ourselves to assist and mentor and support other organizations that want to enter into the space of harm reduction, because harm reduction is all about saving lives. And if indeed we want to save lives, we need to extend our knowledge to other colleagues who are in the field. So COSAP consists of different professionals, which makes up a multidisciplinary team. So we have clinical associates, we have family physicians, we have social workers, we have peer educators who are from the community of people who use drugs, we have community health workers, and we also have data captures, because we know that whatever we do, it must be captured. Because if we don't capture, then we can't use it for research purposes. So these are the services that COSAP is providing. The first one is a screen and brief intervention. So we utilize the assist. Many of you, I think you were introduced to assist during the course of the week. We also do, and in terms of the assist is repeated every 3 months. So we are able to measure the high risk or the risk level of our clients. Secondly, we also do medical examination, where the clinical associates are involved in ensuring that our clients get comprehensive medical examinations. Because people who use drugs are not animals. All the conditions that affect me and you also affect them. And we understand that they don't have a luxury of going to the clinics because of the toxic relationship. So clinical associates close that gap to ensure that they provide the primary healthcare services to our people. And where needs be, they are referred to the clinics. We also have NSP services. And in the last month, we reached more than 2,479 people. And we were able to distribute 48,622 needles and collect 51,207 needles. So this is more than 100% collection rate. We also have OST, and currently we have 788 clients on OST across City of Tshwane. And because we understand that our clients are mostly affected by TB and HIV, so our clinical associates are involved in ensuring that all of our clients get screened for HIV. And if they they are reactive to the HIV test, then they are referred to partners for ART and also TB screenings. And we have social workers who are implementing psychosocial services. And that is case where group sessions, family support sessions, and also linkage to other social services, like having an ID. Because we know our clients, most of them, either they lost their IDs or the IDs with a snayman. And in order to survive in this era, in South African context, you need an ID. So we do link up our clients with appropriate services. And another one is skill development center. Skill development services. Currently, we don't have a program on skill development program. But what we do, we work with partners and different stakeholders. And when needs be, we also assist with money because we understand sometimes our clients can't pay for skill development services. So we also assist with that. And contrary to the popular belief that harm reductionists don't embrace inpatient, we as COSAP, we believe in giving people options. And we also understand that harm reduction is about giving people options. You don't impose one kind of treatment on everyone, but you allow people to make their options and stick to them. So we refer clients to inpatients and also support them post-inpatient program. We are also involved in awareness and educational programs and research. So harm reduction, colleagues, is an evidence-based practice. Everything that we do must be informed by research. So as COSAP, we do have researchers who are on daily basis engaged in research, and we are also available to allow other scholars and students to use COSAP as a research site. And because we understand that there's a gap in terms of harm reduction, we have a training facilitator who leads training. Because what we know is that people don't understand harm reduction. And because of they don't understand harm reduction, they appear as skeptical towards harm reduction because of the knowledge deficit. But once they get trained, they are able to understand where harm reduction fits in their lives, and many embraces it. We also have a call center, which is called Hope Line, where members of the community are able to call in and they get referred to various services, not only limited to substance use, but all GBH services, crisis interventions, all kind of services. And what I like about our program is that we have embraced outreach services. And not only, through awareness programs or through NSP, we have what is called street medicine, where clinicians will leave their offices to go in the street to attend to the needs of our people. Looking at these pictures, You know, the first one at the top there, you see there's a bicycle there. So the clinical associate was using the bicycle to access this different hotspot. And it happened to that on one of the hotspots, one guy was critically ill and he couldn't manage himself. Therefore, he was assisted with calling an ambulance, and in few minutes, the EMS was there to pick him to the hospital. So it's important that we don't remain in office, we go out to engage with the colleagues or our people on the street. And the last one here, we see a clinical associate doing a wound dressing. Because we know our people, because of lack of knowledge on safe injecting practices, they miss shot, they experience abscesses, and they don't have the appetite to go to the clinic due to stigma. So now through street medicine, we are closing that gap, where our clinicians go to the streets to engage with people and also to teach them on how to manage their wounds, you know. And we also have psychosocial services on the streets, where social workers leave their office to engage with clients on the street and also link them with relevant services from the street. Because harm reduction is all about relationship. Once you are able to expose yourself to the community and the community interact and feel that you love and appreciate them, they will be able to trust your services. But if you don't expose yourself to the community of people who use drugs, that will have issues that will have challenges, because they might feel that you are like everyone, and many might not even come in. So at the core of our services is partnership. So COSAP believes that on their own they cannot, but COSAP will utilize different services that are within the community to maximize on their impact. Because for us to have efficient services, we need to collaborate. So as COSAP, we are working with different departments, different department partners, forums, structures, and people on the ground, activists, to ensure that we work towards the same goal, which is to save lives and give our people a second chance to be functional. Because in harm reduction, we are not striving that people should stop using, but we are striving for our people to be functional. And we know when people are functional, they are able to take informed decisions. But when a person is not functional, whatever they do is not influenced by anything. It's influenced by the moment. So within the city of Tshwane, the members, the residents of city, they are privileged. I must say this, because through the work that we are doing within COSAP, we are able to bring everyone, on board so that services may reach everyone. So we are working with shelters, homeless shelters, and there is a homeless forum within the city of Tshwane. And early this year, we were involved in street count, where we were counting people who lives on the street, so that when we design interventions for them, we know how many people are there. Because sometimes without numbers, you can't design an intervention. You will plan that, no, I'll budget 10 rand to provide a certain service, and when you get there are 1,000 people. So it's important to have numbers. And now we understand that our people, because homelessness is not our niche, but we understand that our people are also exposed to homelessness. So it's important that we partner with all these people. We know issues of shelters are not our issues. Issues of settlement are not our issues. But because our people are exposed to those challenges, we need to bring ourselves to the table and engage with different stakeholders so that they understand the plight of our people and they also understand the challenges of our people. And the former president said, sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand, and sports can create hope where once there was only despair. So as COSAP, we were catalysts to the formation of Sport is Your Gang, which now it was changed to sport is your future, because subs felt that the gang part is a bit controversial, and they replaced the gang with future, because indeed sport is a language, and you'll see different people who can't even converse together. They will play soccer, so sports connect. So now the purpose or the reason of sports is your future was to link, different stakeholders with the service, with the different stakeholders with service users. Because if you look at what is happening within our community, our people who use drugs don't have a relationship with most stakeholders because of stigma. So now we were closing the gap by bringing everyone on board to say, hey, come, let's play. But when we play, we form teams. We don't play against. We form a team that will consist maybe 2 members from COSAP, 3 members from SAPS, 4 members from NPA, and they play together. Because in the process of playing together, they must communicate. They must support each other. And we draw such lessons out of such games to say, hey, as stakeholders, we need to recognize people who use drugs as a community. And we need to be supportive. We should not only go after them to arrest or punish, but we need to support them. But the question, how do you support a person that you don't know? How do you support a person that you don't have a relationship with? How do you support something that you don't understand? So through Sport is Your Gain is where we bring ordinary member of South African police, not the captains in the national office, but the ordinary men in blue who who drive around with a van harassing our people. So we bring those closer to say, hey, these are your people. Build relationship with them. And again, allow them to show you or inform you about their experiences. Because people do drugs for various reasons. And it's not fair to assume that people use drugs because of one thing. I was awoken by experience where I spoke with someone and she said, the reason I'm using drugs is because I was raped. And I never told even one person. You are the first person that I'm telling because I can trust you. But everyone judged me, and I couldn't open up. And I remember another client who said, I'm on the streets because I was adopted. And through that adoption, my adoptive father started to rape me. And I went to my mother and said, Mom, this is happening. And my mother said, you want to destroy my marriage. I had to leave. So it's unfair on us to judge people without understanding their stories. Therefore, through this craft of Sport is Your Gain, we are able to bring everyone together. If you look at the harm reduction staff arrested by South African police, when we started at COSAP, one of our colleagues was arrested for distributing NSP. But through the engagement like Sport is Your Gain, we see on the top picture there on your right, where a peer educator is distributing NSP with the police. Now there was a change, there was a move. So it's important that we continue to work with our police officers to establish relationships, engage with them, even though it's not going to be easy, because we have different people within the subs. Some understand that punitive measures are not worth any cent. And some are just moral. And some are dealing with their own egos. Some are dealing with traumas. So it's important that we close the gap, but we must bring them closer to us. And from Sport is Your Gain, what we did, we realized that it carries a lot of benefits. And we started to engage in recreational activities at a set level. And we also encourage the staff to participate, because sports and play is language, and it's able to bring people closer. And believe me, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So sport is able to close that gap. And from there, what we did, we established what is called COSA Fun Run and Fun Walk, where we invited different stakeholders within a region to come and exhibit their services. And we also invited different community members to come and participate in Fun Run and Fun Walk and aerobics. The first one was to just create awareness around substance. The second one was to expose the community to different stakeholders working in a defined space, or a region, or a certain township. Then also to harness the relationship between stakeholders, because our stakeholders are not working together. And who is losing most is us as people who use drugs. Because government will fund programs, sponsors will fund programs, but people are working in silos. And they are not engaged in a coordinated activities. So as a result, services are not reaching where they are supposed to reach. So as harm reduction program, once you arrive in such a space, you have a responsibility to bring all those stakeholders together. Because they are skeptical, they are like, this harm reductionist, they are here to promote drugs, right? But when you get there and you are there to promote even collaboration on a grassroots level, they change their perception about the program. Because they will feel the love that you are giving your people. Because you are not only concerned about what is happening in your site, you are concerned about what is happening in your community. And that is what harm reduction is. So we had the first one in Mamelodi around May, where we were able to reach 222 members of the public who came and participated in our event. And on the 5th of August, we had the second one. We had 265 people coming in to participate. And I remember one gentleman approached me and, queried because he couldn't see a person who used drugs at our event. And I was like, my friend, if you go around, you won't see any because they are not written here. But there are many people who use drugs in this event. But you'll never see them because our assumption is that the person who uses drugs is dirty. Our assumption is the person who uses drugs doesn't even smell nice. That's an assumption. There's a lot of people who use drugs in this room. Maybe me, you'll never know. You'll never know. So, it's unfair just to assume. So, but I think that the fellow was taught that harm reduction, because it doesn't focus on stop. You allow people to live. They choose for themselves. And because you are giving them a responsibility, they will be responsible with the options they have taken. Okay, so I want to play the video. This scenario unfolded last month where the colleagues who were engaged in street medicine went to a particular community in Block F in Soshanguve. And after that, we received this video. I think after 3 hours, we received this video because this gentleman was furious. He was not happy. Apparently, we were killing the community. And because of harm reduction and we understand the value of community engagement, we tried to locate him. So I had a meeting with him and other street committees. And during our session, when we finished with the meeting, he said, you need to come and brief the community because the way it is and the way I was angry, they will think you have bribed me. So I'll play this video. It has 2 parts. So the first part is before we interacted with him, after he heard about us coming in and assisting our people. And there's a voice note that came after the meeting I had with the community.
Dumela buti. Nna ka lebitso ke Ngwale ne. Ngwale ke chairperson ya area committee ya Adpw. Now re tla re shiana re utlwa gore ba re go na le di-doctor mo di fa batho ba ba tsubang dinyaope di-injection ke nnete e ko molaong ba tlhaba le kae batho bao Kosapo. Yeah, once again, we are concerned ka mphakathi wa rena ne. Now we are here to save lives like batho ba o tshwana le lona. So ha re tshameke re le ma F West ne. Ntho nngwe le nngwe e etsahalang, phoso nngwe le nngwe e etsahalang, tshwantse re shiane wa bona go save maphelo a batho. Wa utlwisisa? Batho ba bola bana ba borena ka jeng. So ka ge o re fa tip off ya hore no gona le di doctor mo. Yeah, well, even this side ka mo re a bona ke mo kereke ha ya kampelo tshwantse re ngwalle moruti letter hore re kopela go kopana le ena so that ba kgone go kampela kereke ya bona, because if you check under that tree, cameraman, if under that tree wa bona go tsubiwa batho ke ba le ba tsuba mola under that tree, so re nyoko kereke e kampelwe ba tlhokele space sa go ka tlo ira dilo tse snacks wa utlwisisa. So ba hetso re mo kerekeng mo F West mo hopefully everyone wa itse kereke next to Naf Koko back opposite ya Sotowo. So abuti ke leboga information ya hao re tlhaile re shiana re tlo ba diba gore why ba tseya di-injection tsa kgale ba ba fa tse dingwe because ba ba bolaya gape ba bo di-8 mo Bible school. No, re tla ya re ba bona re a leboga okay kana gore ke bomang Kosapo. Okay. Le ba tsamaya ka koloi e bjang? Oh, ba berekisa Mazda 2 le Avanza ne. Ke a leboga le van. No, ke a leboga ngwana. Thank you so much for your information. Re a leboga.
Good day, Mr. Hendrik Lefoka. Sir, we want to appreciate your visit today here in our community at Soshanguve Block F West. Yeah, what you have said to our community, you told them the truth. You told them the truth about the kids, and then your induction was some sort of also workshop, was okay. Our parents were happy for you. They appreciated whatever you said to them. So we are saying as community leaders here in F West, thank you so much. Even tomorrow, whenever we call you, please avail yourself. Thank you, Mr. Lefoka. And again, say thanks to the University of Pretoria and also at City of Tshwane Metropolitan Municipality. Thank you so much. Ria leboga.
So as I close, we need to continue engaging our community. We should not leave them behind, because knowledge deficit creates a perception that harm reduction is promoting. But once people understand what harm reduction is, they buy in easily. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lefuk. Re a leboga. Guys, we have 5 minutes left. I'll just take quick comments, questions before we close. I need help.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, colleagues. Let's give them a round of applause. That was great. Thank you so much. Mine, man, the team, it's directed to, in particular, UNODC, because I spoke even that side, that they're going to say we need, in terms of more trainings that will focus, so that what you have just alluded to say, the more we don't reach and communicate and speak with people, the more we leave unnecessary gaps in terms of, because the truth is our people are not informed, and we all know that we've been doing all these things. If you check in terms of the other issues that have been done in terms of prevention, treatment, and the likes, we all coming from the same place. Even now, the premier in Gauteng announced about a line about rehabs, about a farm. But in reality, there's still about 50,000 or so still waiting. Then what are we saying? Are we saying those people, they must suffer? And those are child, parents, children of someone, and all those things and so forth. So we are merely saying we need in terms of more, in terms of reach out, and empower, and equally, and as we do some of these things, we need to ensure that the local drug action committees, the provincial substance abuse, we've been pushing in Ekurhuleni. We ensured that that organization, SG, what is the one that is sponsored in Tembisa by Nakos? Magu, what is that name? What? The name the one in Tembisa. Yeah, but anyway, Nakwasa, they know. I'm merely saying that our colleagues, we need to ensure to say the community, the networks, they form part, so that we are able to educate each other, but ensuring that we save lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you. More community engagement, sir.
I just wanted to say congratulations, what really remarkable work from all four presentations. Just really to see the development of harm reduction and to see that it grow, integrating gender-based services and doing research in an ethical way, and then it's just a really remarkable development of harm reduction services. You should be very, very proud. I take huge learning away from what you've taught us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I think it's time to eat. It's lunchtime, and after this, please, everyone, come here as we're going to have a closing session and wrap up everything that we've experienced throughout this past week. Thank you, guys.